The book is broken out into three sections. It's key to understand this. The first is thinking, the second is speaking, and the third part is just this living it out, this action piece. And so in the thinking part, David had that weapon of awareness. He was aware of the moment he was in. He wasn't aware that he was going to be promoted so powerfully after this confrontation. In fact, if you think about it, it was actually David's giant that promoted him, because so many people didn't know who he was before, and God used that, and that carried him forward. But another piece of this is the unified mind, and I spent some time unifying how we talk and how we think, and certainly thinking how God thinks about us.
Let's elaborate just a bit with respect to this concept of the unified mind.
Right.
So many distractions, so many different thoughts that are contrary to the Word of God that can come into our minds that we allow to take root and build strongholds. Talk about what does a unified mind, if I can say it like this, look like, if you will, and how do we really build that in our lives?
Well, I think in some ways it's the power of your ministry. You know, you have highlighted that over the years, and I think in this case, unifying the mind is making sure that God's thoughts stay at the forefront. That it matters most what God thinks about us and how God thinks about us, no matter what's going on in the culture or our friends or even our family. What's most important is what does God say about us and how does God feel about us. And unifying ourselves with God thoughts elevates our thinking and also creates a great personal energy and power. Yeah.
So the unified mind, that's one of these different aspects that you cover, one of the weapons, if you will, principles that you lay out in the book, Slings and Stones.
Right.
There's also a weapon of facing the truth.
Yeah, there's a funny story, and I tell it in the book, but I lived in Orlando for quite a while, and one morning I was leaving to work. It was still dark, and I was going to teach at the university, and I stepped on right out the front door, stepped on the welcome mat, and there was a giant snake. It was really fat and large. I stepped on it, and it scared the both of us. So for about a year and a half, I looked all around our front porch and bushes. Every time I went out that front door in the mornings, I always checked for the snake.
Oh, yeah.
And so my point is that the enemy can get in our heads. And so the weapon of awareness, to know how he can plant himself into your thinking, and it actually lives outside your awareness. I didn't even think about it for the longest time. I would just look out the side window of the door to make sure the snake wasn't there before I went out. And so for our own life to get victory over that, the enemy's thoughts and the experiences, the past experiences we had, have to be put behind us. And awareness lets us face that and see that, and that becomes a weapon in our hands.
Yeah. What's up with that? I mean, because we haven't experienced a one-time thing, but it kind of gets in there, it gets in our thinking, and we're all, we're trying to avoid that unpleasant thing that enters into our mind. And I'm sure, obviously, there can be fear that can be instructive and healthy for us.
Right.
It's like you teach your children, don't step out in the middle of the street because there could be a car come down the street. I mean, that's a good preventative thing, but sometimes we just get these little things that nag at us that we're just trying to, we just act in a certain way. We're almost preconditioned as a result of just one experience.
If those are not addressed, if those are not dealt with, those are the things that become giants in our life. And I'm convinced that that's the way an addiction starts. It starts with a fixation or an attachment, and it ultimately can lead into some really debilitating thinking, which is intended by the enemy to de-energize a person. Even people listening today that have an attachment or even addiction in their life, it started with the smallest thought. And so I talk about that in the book, that's the smallest God thought can bring victory. David just had the thought, hey, I don't think that uncircumcised Philistine is supposed to be saying this, and that thought transformed him and promoted him into who God had created him to be.